Shalom Beth El family. It's Thursday, time to review our Parsha talk from last week. Last week we read Parshat Terumah in synagogue, and it's a beautiful Parsha all about the tabernacle that would be the tent of meeting that they would carry around with them in the desert. The Israelites would, in order to keep the Ten Commandments and the Ark of the Covenant in their midst, and for God to dwell among them. Now, I put with the weekly email this week a source sheet. It would be very helpful for you if you are able to download that, but I'll try and review the sources so that if need be, you can follow along with me. In Shul, I tried to answer two questions. One is the question of the Parsha opens with the phrase, "Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves him." The question is, what does this mean that the heart moves them? We kind of take for granted this connection now between the heart and the emotions, but why? The second question I'm going to answer is why a heart looks like this. Right? We all know that our actual heart does not look like that. It's looks a little bit more like a fist in our chest. So where did we get this funny idea of these two equal, my fingers don't do it so well, but these two equal sized lobes facing each other? And we're going to answer both those questions, hopefully by the end of this talk. So the first thing we need to do is to go back and understand the purpose of the Mishkan itself, the purpose of this tabernacle in the desert. We do that by going back and looking at Exodus 19:19. First actually start with Exodus 36, 4 through 6. Right? Amazing thing. This is now much later at the end of the book of Exodus, and they're preparing the tabernacle that we've been talking about over the past few weeks. And it says, all of the artisans who were engaged in the tasks of the sanctuary came, each from the task upon which he was engaged, and said to Moses, "These people are bringing more than is needed for the tasks entailed in the work that the Lord has commanded to be done." Now, here is maybe one of the great miracles of the book of Exodus. This is a unique event in the history of the Jewish people. What happens next? Moses thereupon had this proclamation made throughout the camp: "Let no man or woman make further effort toward gifts to the sanctuary." So the people stopped bringing. Their efforts had been more than enough for all the tasks to be done. Right? Clearly the only time in the history of the Jewish people that a rabbi or a shul president ever got up and told the people, don't give any more. Right? That's just not how things work. But here in this first building fund, it is how it works. So the question is why? Why were these peoples so generous? And in order to understand that, we need to now go back and look at what in fact happened on Mount Sinai. We read in Exodus 19:19, so now this is 2 weeks ago, during Parshat Yitro in the revelation at Sinai, right? The blare of the horn grew louder and louder. As Moses spoke, God answered him b'kol. God answered him in thunder. B'kol means, but it also means in voice. I think we can't underestimate how powerful that phrase is. Right? First, Moses spoke, and then only did God answer him in voice. That's not how we usually think of it, right? We think of the people gathering on the mountain and God's voice calling to them, come to me, do as I say. But what happens is actually much more miraculous than that, much more amazing than that. What happens is that Moses calls, and God answers in kind. Right? That is the power of Sinai. That is the power of revelation. It's not so much that God speaks to the Jewish people. I mean, that's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But what's amazing is that God does so when prompted by the Jewish people. Look, we have cases of prophecy throughout the Bible. God comes to people, and the people answer. They have no choice. God's talking to them. But this is something different. This is the ability for the people to call God and have God answer in voice. That's amazing. That's a miracle. And that's ultimately what the tabernacle is also all about. If you if you have the source sheet at the last source on there, which is Ramban, the Nachmanides introduction to the Parsha, he says if they were to be a holy nation, it behooved them to have a holy place, a sanctuary in their midst where God's presence could rest among them. So he first commanded them about the tabernacle in order to have a home among them, sanctified for his name, where he could speak with Moses and give commandments to the Israelites. And then a little further along in the introduction, the mystery behind the tabernacle is that God's presence, which abode publicly at Sinai, and that word on Sinai is shachan, to live someplace, would discreetly do the same in the tabernacle, or mishkan, right? Mishkan comes from that word, shachan, to dwell. The presence that Israel saw on Sinai would always be with them in the tabernacle. That's what the Mishkan is all about. That's what Judaism is all about. Right? It's all about trying to recreate the relationship that was formed, the bond that was formed on Sinai. This idea that we could reach out to God and that God would answer us, that God would reach back. And at the Mishkan, that is what we are trying to do. And by the way, it was the Mishkan, and then it was the tabernacle, then it was the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem. And after the destruction of the temple, where do we go to have this witnessing of God? We go to synagogue. That's what our synagogues are today. That's why we have an ark in which we keep the Torah. That's why we have a Ner Tamid, an eternal light above it. All of these trappings are the trappings that we read about in Parshat Terumah in the tabernacle, because our synagogues, even though they're just a shadow of it, are supposed to also be this place where we sense God a little more closely and a little more strongly here on earth. And maybe we walk into the synagogue and we can't hear exactly what God is saying like Moses did, but the truth is the same was for the Jews on Sinai. And the one text that I skipped over in our sheet, the Ramban on Exodus 19:19, the end of his comment, he says they heard the voice of God answering Moses, but they did not understand what it was saying to him. Right? We can't all be prophets. We can't all understand exactly what God's message is for us. But coming to a synagogue, right, this shadow down the road of what the tabernacle was, we can maybe have a sense that God is in our lives, that God is talking. And maybe together as a community, we can tease out what that's supposed to mean. Okay, but up until now, I haven't answered my question of what's so big that the people gave by heart in order to make this happen, and where does the heart shape come from? So for that, we need to look at what exactly happened at Sinai. How was this relationship formed that we're trying to recreate in all of our sanctuaries? And to understand it, we need to know that in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for heart is lev, lamed bet. There was a rabbi in the late 1200s named Avraham Abulafia, and he wrote that we shouldn't read it lamed bet, but bet has a numerical value of 2. So we should read it as lamed times 2, right? That the heart is 2 lameds. But he goes on to say that it can't just be 2 lameds, because if when we're in relationship with people, we need to face each other, then the lameds should be turned face to face, not back to back, but face to face. And a lamed's shape is sort of a long top and then a round bottom. And when you put 2 of them together, face to face, it looks like something a little different. It looks like there's a picture on your source sheet, but in case you can't see the picture, it looks like that, right? This little heart necklace here is not a heart necklace. It's 2 lameds placed back, front to front. As you can see, it looks a lot like 2 people facing each other. It looks like a heart as we know it. Because what is a heart, in fact? What do we symbolize by it? Love. And what is love if it is not two people facing each other openly as equals, trying to relate, trying to figure each other out? And that's ultimately what happened between God and the Jews on Sinai. We found each other face to face, and we made a heart. Our two lameds came together. And that's why in Terumah, the people had to give from the heart, right? That's why they had to, we are told, give everyone as their heart so moves them. Because if the tabernacle, if the Mishkan is going to be the new place where this kind of relationship happens, then our hearts need to be in it. In the same way they were on Sinai when we were face to face with God, open and ready to connect. And that's how we also need to come to synagogue. Right? Open, ready for a relationship with God, a relationship with the people around us, and maybe even, to be in better relationship with ourselves, understand our own hearts a little better. So look, I don't know for a fact that the symbol heart is the derivation of two lameds facing each other. But it certainly could be, and it certainly should be, because that's what a heart is all about. It's about approaching openly to make a connection. And that's what Judaism is all about too. Living our lives in such a way that we are open to connection, that we are open to a relationship with that which is greater than ourselves, a relationship with the divine. And we come to synagogue in order to join with other people, just like we did on Sinai, who are looking to have that open, heart-based relationship with God. I hope that all of our synagogues, and especially our Beth El, serve our purpose as a platform for that divine relationship and that beautiful communal relationship. Hopefully we'll see you in synagogue next week. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.